Here we have a kit of parts from classictube.com, a stainless steel pre-bent, a complete set with lines and hoses. And I have to say they're pretty good at labelling everything up, with the exception that we have, obviously these are the front and rear brake lines. For this one it says right to front brake line, and the other one says left front brake line, which is great. Out of all of the ones, those are the ones that are easy to identify anyway. Now the others, for the hoses, are unidentified, and they are handed. So these are the two front ones, and you can see they are handed. They go with brackets opposite sides, so they'll be easy to resolve when we fit those. But the others, I've got two front to rear brake lines, which I just labelled front to rear brake lines. It doesn't tell you which is left or which is right. And similarly, I've got the larger diameter tubes, which are for the master cylinder, and they just have on them, what do they have on them? They have master cylinder line. So I've got two that say master cylinder line, but they don't tell me which way around they are. Now, it's not normally a problem, because when you take the old line out, you can compare the two, if you can do that. But in my case, we're going to have to crop the lines off because they are that rotten. And also going to have to cut them off the ABS pump so that we can actually get the lines out in the first place. The fittings are all seized, and it doesn't help when the actual tube is seized to the fitting. Imagine that being stuck to the tube. It makes it even harder to undo. So we're going to have to cut them to get them off. Then we've lost the location of where all of the pipes go to. It would have made life really great if there was a kind of a diagram of which pipe went where regarding the ABS pump. We're going to try and do that today. That's one of the first things we've got to do, trying to work out which tube goes where. Obviously, I only need to identify one master cylinder line and one rear brake line, and we can work out the others. But just be careful of that. Not complaining at Classic Tube. I mean, they've done a great job, but it's just down to practicality of finding out where things go. Particularly difficult since my truck is only a foot off the floor, and when you're crawling on your back, stuck, trying to work out where everything else, life is really hard. That's just a note on the tubes. This is the right rear, one of the right rear brake lines, hydraulic line. I've disconnected it from there. If you follow it around underneath, it comes up and over to that point there where you can see I've just disconnected it. This is the shape of the hose as it comes along. The replacement line does not have this clip in the middle here. I'm not sure why. So there's nothing to support it from there. Not quite sure how that works, but we'll get to it. That I can undo. The one on the other side there is a bit tight. I've put loads of WD-40 penetrating version, and that looks pretty manky up there. But I'm just for the time being going to replace this line and the one that goes round to the brakes on the other side. This is where we're at. This is the right rear brake line. As you can see, there's a bracket that secures the short hose, which connects to the actual brakes itself. This is the replacement part, so we've got to fit that on there. And there's a retaining clip that holds this part on. I'm just trying to figure out how the best way to get that retaining clip off, and then we can make it look a bit more respectable. I managed to get this clip off, put the new pipe on. This pipe can be rotated using the nut on the end there to get the position exactly right, and then this just screws back in. That's the new part. These are the rear brakes on the Hummer H2. You can see I've done the right hand side brake line, and the left hand side brake line, having been disturbed by me working on the other side, has also sprung in a leak, which just shows how bad the lines are. I'm just making a note of where the clips are. They're pretty obvious. But you know, this desperately needs sorting. Desperately needs sorting. First of all, the bleed nipple looked like it was okay. Here we are, as a bleed nipple, but as you can see, it's just rotted away into nothing. There's nothing left of it. Sprayed it with plus gas just to penetrating oil, just to try and free it up. But I'm gonna have to do the job on that as well. As on the other side, the brake calipers are pretty well worn, and the rotors are also very badly scarred. They're gonna all need replacing, so this drum's gonna have to come off. How that works, I don't know. Not sure, but it's got to come off. This is the front left wheel. We've taken the correct flexible hose from the classic tube kit. We're going to take this line off and fit the new one. Now I've opened the bleed nipple, which is loose now. No fluid is draining out, so I'm trying to get as much fluid out of the system as possible. And it's important to give the area of the main connector a clean before you start, because you don't want to brush any bits into the actual calipers themselves. That's all ready to go. As you can see, my brake discs are pretty shot. They're going to get replaced as well, but first do the lines, then we'll do the brakes. Take it from there, and somehow get all of the pipes through the various glands and trying to work out where they go. It's not so easy, but I'm sure we'll get there. Okay, here we go. The first mini step is to pop out the sensor cable, and that just pushes into the side of that bracket and comes out fairly easily, he says. That just pushes in. It's got some kind of captive clip, but this whole bracket's going to be changed. We're going to unbolt that bracket and then move on to the next section. To get the little bracket off, you're going to need a 10mm socket where you just can't get in with a wrench, and that should just come out. I did spray some penetrating oil on earlier, but as you can see, penetrating oil didn't manage to make it inside the screw, which is not really much use. Let me put that on there for later. Now whilst we're here, this is the new flexible hose. You can see that the front left brake line here runs on the outside of this clip. So this clip is a 4-way clip, right? It's a 5-way because it's got a big inner diameter for a line, another cable up by the looks of it. So nearest to me is the front left. Furthest away, I'm pretty sure, is the front right, which goes underneath this cover and seems to disappear off to the other side. We've got a duplicate of that down here. I think it's sensible to actually take the lines out. Now we know where they go. I just need to check which line here goes to where on the master cylinder, and then that will resolve that mystery, as I mentioned earlier when talking about the stainless steel tubes. Anyway, we'll continue. We've got this bracket loose and it looks like it just taps in somehow. We'll fathom that out in a moment. I've unscrewed this bracket. It appears this is some kind of locking pin that fits in a hole, which the new bracket doesn't have, and then there's just a single bolt that locks it into place. So we've got a blind hole, untapped hole, and a tapped hole. I'm not sure how we're going to stop that from waggling around, because the new fitting doesn't have that. So I may elect to tap this hole and put a bolt in it, but let's just see. what that hole turns out to be. I'm going to clean it up with a wire brush. It looks pretty awful at the moment, so we're going to do that job now. I'm going to come back to this hole. It measures 4.5 millimeters in diameter, which to my reckoning would just make it about right for an M5 tap. The fitting on the side of the calipers is a 7/16 or 11mm fitting, which comes undone really easily. We need to save the bolt, but we need to save the bolt, but we're going to lose the copper washers. We don't need those anymore. But that comes undone really easily. What puzzles me is that you've got imperial fittings here, but the bleed nipple is 10mm. I don't think that's an imperial size. It doesn't seem to fit any of my imperial open pipe wrench spanners. There we go. That's off. Don't think it fits any of those. No, just doesn't fit any size. This is all free now. Just bear in mind when it goes back, it tucks underneath that cable and then it roots itself. Okay, let's tap this hole. I've tapped out the hole, which actually was M5. There was 0.5 millimeter of rust inside there, and it makes sense that the two holes would be very similar. They probably drill them at the same time and just didn't bother tapping one of them. It is, both sides are actually now tapped M6. The original bolt is M6, the new bolt is M6. And I just happen to have some nice stainless steel bolts. Unfortunately, I don't have stainless steel washers, so there'll be no washer on this, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, next stage, cut myself some bolts. The new tapped hole was not as deep as the old one, but I don't think that really matters. It's got at least 6 millimeters worth of thread depth, enough to hold a M6 bolt in there. And I found a stainless steel bolt, but not a stainless steel washer. But I don't think that really matters. There's more than enough rust around here. So that bolted in. So now we just got to work our way up to the line and put the other bits in there, and then put the clamp on this end. I've removed the final bracket. As you can see, it's got a captive clip, and we need to recover the bolt from the other end. Just one thing to note, that the actual bracket that mounts to the arm on the wheel is actually quite substantial. It's probably 2.5mm thick, and the new one is much thinner. So they've obviously cut down on the size of the materials substantially. Probably this was an overkill. One thing is we don't have this gaiter that goes around the flexible pipe, and there's no way to fit it on there. It's not a split gaiter. That's something we're going to just lose. So there we go. Finally, we have the line installed. I've just poked this old fitting in there just to keep any debris out of that gland whilst we're working. Don't want to get any dust in there. You can see the new line fits okay. It's a bit close to this, but that doesn't really, there's not much you can do. But that's a bit flimsy, really, compared to the old one, I have to say. But there we go. The cable's back in its clip, that fits nicely. You can see the new stainless steel A2 stainless bolt. Didn't have an A3 one, but that should be okay. So it's pretty much as it was. The right hand side's pretty much a mirror image of the left hand side. Got the same thing here. I'm just undoing the coupling there. I think we may be able to pull that clip off without taking that bracket off, which would save a little bit of time. I've bled what fluid there is out. There's nothing. I've loosened the coupling to the calipers, so I'm just working my way through this, and same on the other side. We're going to tap this hole. All the time making shortcuts, so I can leave that bracket on, just pull the clip off, tap the hose out, comes out easy peasy. The original bolt that's through the connector to the calipers, the copper rings are hard to get off. It's probably easy just to get a pair of side cutters and just cut them off, because they're going to be replaced anyway. That saves a lot of time, so we're going to do that. So this is the right front side done. The bleed nipple is loose to let any fluid out, but the actual coupling on there, like the other side, has only just been poked in. Again, we tap the hole, clamped it on. This again is a little bit flimsy, I think. Probably done with another half a mil on that. I think it's a metal, but probably adequate. One new brake hose fitted. All 4 hoses have now been done. So now we're on the hard stuff, which is the brake lines themselves. I'm unclipping pipes. I'm going to clip this front left brake line here. Not quite sure how it gets in. Clips in that one. Clips in that one there at the front. So there's only 2 lines in that one, which is the right hand brake and the left hand brake. The left hand just pops out of there. That's there. I think that just pokes out of there, which is in there. It's probably going to do the same again here. Same again there. Might need a screwdriver. Difficult to say how it fits. Yeah, it's going to need something on there. I think I have cut this line here underneath, because that's where the leak was. So it's no good, it's got to be replaced. So let's work on that. With a little bit of screwdriver assistance, you can prise these pipes out. Now, the furthest one here is the right hand brake line. Now, I would think that the hardest ones to put in are going to be the ones on the other side. It may be better to concentrate on getting those out first and then concentrating on the others. That's what I'm going to do. So that goes there. I don't know if there are any more clamps. There's 1, 2, 3 clamps there, 4 clamps there. It'd be tempting to put the easy ones in first, but then you're going to struggle with the other ones. Let's go for that. I had a load of other wiring in here, which is probably due to my gas conversion, which is clouding the issue and making it hard for me to work out which pipes go where. Now I've still got some fluid left in my cylinder, which I don't really want, and it's going to be difficult to drain out, so I may have to cut one of the pipes below it again just to let that out. Unfortunately, it's raining a little bit here, so making life very difficult. I've pulled that out of the way. I have another pipe block down below, a clip block. I need to trace which pipe goes where. It's very hard to tell. I'd dearly love to get this out of the way, but I just don't think that's going to happen at the moment. I really don't want to disconnect the master cylinder. I've been trying to work out where the pipes go, and I think I'm going to need more access. I think this reservoir is going to have to come off, and I think this panel is going to have to come out, and I think my LPG controller is going to have to move out the way while I just get access into this area. It's pretty tight down there, and I can't see and I can't get at it. Certainly not going to get any new pipes in. This panel's come out, gives me much better view. All sorts of junk down in here. We can clean out. My little module is secured just by a single bracket, so I'm going to take that bracket off. I've tried to get the connector off. It's not easy to dislodge. It should just pop off, but we'll get to that. The LPG ECU has popped out. It's held on by that nut which I've left in place. This goes captive onto that, pushes onto the screw, so crude way of making a cable support. So now we can got a little bit more access down to the pipes below. I'm tempted to cut another one of those pipes to make sure that everything's drained out of the master cylinder that could have drained. Underneath the master cylinder is a cable clip that's just floating. It's just hanging on another pair of wires that goes around the two pipes as they work their way down, and I think that's it. There may be another cable clip that I just can't get to. I can't even see, but yes, there is another clip below there. How are we going to get the pipes in? I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. It's very tight down there. If I can shed a bit of light on the pipes below. Hard to get the thing to focus, but those pipes down there held in another clip. The pipe that's furthest forward, right, which is to the master cylinder, this connector here, okay, that one swings round, goes below, and then comes to the inside. So this is the one that was damaged. So I'm going to call this one master cylinder 1. So master cylinder 1 works its way around. I'm just going to do something. Hold on. So to prove a point, I've attached a ribbon. You can see it just down below there. Pulling, and when I pull that cable, pull that pipe, that line, it's actually moving the furthest one forward. So the one which I'm going to call master cylinder 2 works its way around and goes on the outside of all of the pipes. So it's the outside pipe. I'm going to prove that as well. To prove a point, I've now tied to the other pipe, which doesn't prove anything, but I can see it working its way around. I'm actually moving both of them because they're leaning together, but I can see it coming around up to here. I'm going to go for undoing this one and see what it does. Furthest pipe, the thicker pipe, goes into one of these ports below here. This pipe goes into one of those. The same on the other side. Master cylinder 2, which is the one nearest to the driver's window, is this pipe, this thick pipe, which I have cut here from here, so we could get rid of all of the fluid and the master cylinder didn't really work that well. That has been severed. So is the right hand brake line, and so will be the near side brake line. I just need to know where those pipes go to on the ABS pump. This one's still captive in here, so I'll free that, then I can pull that pipe out. Then, just for the purpose of identification, this is master cylinder 1, that is master cylinder 2. Okay, one of my clamps, I don't know what that pipe does, but that was at the top holding the two master cylinder pipes together. They were locked in there, so that's kind of underneath the first loop. We can look back on the video to see where that was. I just noticed that it had fallen down, so there's nothing to support it there now. Again, we're pretty much done through getting all of the pipes out here. Putting these pipes back, it's difficult to show. I had to disconnect the hard to show you without getting a blind spot on the light, but I had to disconnect the brake fluid level sensor, otherwise I couldn't get the spanner in. And now this is the line that's just falling down below. This line here, which will come out. This one is master cylinder 2, nearest the window, and that's going to be the first one to go back in, because you can't get this one in with the other one in place. So this one's got to be the first one to go back in. Looking at the pump, which is very hard, the pipe that's at the top and to the left, which is the thicker pipe, right, so you can see there's two pipes on the top. The one on the left is master cylinder 2, which is the one that runs nearest all the way down to the end. So that's master cylinder 2. Over the top and out of sight, opposite to that one, is this copper line here, which runs opposite to this first pipe runs opposite to this, just there on the other side. That is left front brake. So the thickest line here is going to be, this one here is going to be master cylinder 2, right, and then the one behind it is going to be master cylinder 1. So you can just see master cylinder 1 pipe running there, that one there, that runs the opposite side. In order to get these undone, I need to undo I think one of those is the rear, could be the rear brake, or it could be, I don't know, not sure which one that one is. But I've got to undo those because you can't spin the span around in that short space, if we can spin it around at all, because it's just literally solid. There's a connector which goes to some function which was clipped on, and I only just touched it and it broke off. Oh, I don't know if it's come slid, I can't see. Can't see what it's doing on the top there. Don't know if my mirror will help. Let's say it's broken off. Can't Anyway, it can be cable tied. No, I'm really having a hard time getting these pipes undone off this ABS pump. It looks more and more like I'm going to have to cut the pipes off and remove the pump, because they are just not going to budge. Okay, just noting the path. This is the right-hand brake pipe, which I managed to disconnect. So just note where it goes. It goes around this cable and in front of this loop, but behind the next leg of the loop, so it actually goes through the loop of that cable. If you could see in there, I'm sure if it's visible, you can see it's going through that loop behind that one, in front of that one. So now I'm going to work this cable out. It wasn't immediately obvious how the ABS pump came out. Looking at this bracket, there are 3 bolts on the other side, but go through this cross member, and the only way you can get at that is through the evap. So there's a whole lot of work involved in getting those, and it's risky as well, because you could drop a bolt inside this trunking and it'll be forever battling. The answer is the ABS pump actually sits on these pins. Well, it just literally hangs there, and these pins slot in and are captive, so you can tighten them up on that slot, and they were pretty loose anyway. The hardest one is on the there's one on the other side, which is a little bit more tricky, but it is accessible. That goes into there. So the big question now for me is, how does the ABS connector come undone? That I don't know. So I'm working on that now. It's very difficult to get perspective under here. So there's the ABS pump. That's actually off its mountains and free to move. So there it is. So what we've got to do is try and work out how the connector comes undone. For future reference, this is the barcode and serial number for the Bosch pump unit that's fitted on my Hummer. This is a 2005 Hummer H2. There is another label which just says for assembly only, but you never know. Sometimes they say, "Oh, did you have the assembly label?" To remove the anti-lock brake pump system off, you pull out this rather long locking insert here, and that releases the pump, and as you can see that it just pushes in to the pump housing. We'll get this pump into the workshop now. Here we have on the ground the stainless steels from classictube.com. They supplied everything, all the flexible hoses, and it comes in a box which is about the same length as what these things are, nice box, and they've been bent. Where you see the little yellow labels, they've all been bent for you to straighten them out, I guess by hand, which I suppose is going to be the least of the worries when we come to put them in the vehicle. Now, for me, the hardest part was underneath the vehicle, trying to get these glands undone. As you can see, I've chewed this one up here quite significantly. This was one that got replaced before. The others I managed to undo. And for those that are interested, the pump is just held in by these two little pegs which have got a flat on them, and they slot into the chassis, so it's literally suspended on these two pins in your Hummer. I guess if you tighten them up it's not going to drop out, but I don't think it's ever going to move because of the tension on the pipes. The connector undoes. There's a long clip that pushes in, which I've put on an earlier video, but I've got no choice but to take this pump out to get at these tubes. Just to discuss the level of rot that's on these tubes, it's hard to see, but I'll try and give you an example. There's one. It's not showing up particularly well in the background, but let's see if we can make it a bit better. There we go. You can see that's pretty rusty. In fact, some of the tubes just fell apart as I moved them around. That's how dangerous they are. So if you've got a Hummer and you've got any problems with the braking system, just take a look at the condition of your brakes, because these are not good at all. Hopefully the new ones will be better. So now I need to work on this pump and clean it up as much as I can, because it's got to go back and we want it squeaky clean so we don't get any grit or debris in the bores for the lines, and we'll take it from here. As a note to the previous video, if you really are going to change all of the lines on your Hummer, then you could save yourself an awful lot of time by just cutting off the tubes on the ABS pump and then just taking the pump out and then taking those out later. It's a lot easier than trying to do it in the vehicle, but you probably won't want to. I didn't want to, but I've been forced to. As much as anyone would like to put a gas torch on these fittings here, I'm not going to do that. We've got to come up with some other way of getting those glands out, but that's going to be gently, but at least it's on the bench at normal height. I'm going to clean the pins up, which is easy just to forget, but when you're going to come to put this together and you want to tighten it up quickly, you don't want to be fighting with the nuts all the way to the last thread, because it's the real pain for the access. So I'm just going to clean these up. Two to do. Here I've cleaned up the pins. You'll see that rotates really easily. That one rotates really easily. I just used a little brass brush on them. They look like they've been nickel plated, I would say, but they're not handed. So you can fit either side, and that's going to make assembly a whole lot easier when we come to put it back together. I've managed to get all of the glands out, and to say it was difficult was an understatement. Now I have a brand new 1/2 inch and 9/16 wrench, for those in America, and that was not good enough. It's so brand new, it's never been used, and it's still, I could not shift. It was the this one here where I'm pointing to with my finger was just seized in solid. The one on the back here, which had been out just over a year ago, came out relatively easier than I thought. Had it not been for this one, I could have saved having to get the pump out, but I'm glad that I did, because I've learnt several things. One is that a lot of the connections are different sizes. If we take the front left, that's one size, will fit nowhere else except this one here, which I believe, according to is the right front. So the left front and the right front are the same size. Now it is stamped on the casing, which everything is. You can't easily see because they're so corroded. So this one here says left rear, and this one says left front. I can just see that. This one says MC1, which ties in with my designations for the master cylinder. I arbitrarily called them master cylinder 1 and 2, 1 being the closest to the front, and that is master cylinder 1, and that is master cylinder 2. And then here we've got right front. You can barely make it out. Right front, and right rear. So these are the 2 ports below, just here. For me, that's a great relief, because I didn't know which was which. Well, I did know, but it's confirmed what I did know. I made a note as I was going along, but it's so easy to get these crossed over in your struggle to get the pipes out. And what was clear in your head, and even though I labelled up on the pipes what they were, it's still easy to make a mistake. I fail. So that's a great comfort to know that I've got them right. Okay, to get the final pipe out, which I cut off even shorter, which was here. As you can see, the nut was very badly chewed, and that was using originally a pipe spanner, a brand new pipe spanner. I bought a set of good quality pipe spanners. That wasn't enough. I tried a 1/2 inch wrench. Sorry, I called it a pipe spanner, a pipe wrench. Okay, I used a 1/2 inch wrench to try and get it out, and that just slipped. Nothing was going to get it out. You can't really put any heat on this because you've got plastic here. This is like a plastic bearing, and Lord knows what you do to the ABS pump inside. What I did was I cleaned around the edge so that the penetrating oil could get in, because there's a layer of gunge on the top there which stops anything getting in anyway. I cleared that out. I got some penetrating oil and let it soak in for a bit. Then I used a small pin vise on my bench to grab the nut. And when I say grab it, I had to tighten it and almost tighten the guts out of it. And eventually I got it to move. And all the way to the last turn of that thread, this was difficult to get out. Once I'd started, I could use the 1/2 inch wrench just to keep it going. Now it's still tight. I'm not happy with that. If I had a tap, I'd run it down there, but I don't have. So it's going to make putting it back together. But anyway, I'm going to play around and clean this up as much as I can, and get rid of all of the corrosion in the threads. Make it so that it's easy to put back together. That's the key, easy to put back together. So there we have one ABS pump. It's going to be hard to show this, but one thing I have come to notice is that the top few threads of the gland holes, right, they get corroded and get a layer of corrosion in there, which stops you easily being able to wind a new gland in. So what I've been doing is going around with a fine, so you can see that rubbish coming off, going around with a fine scalpel and just cleaning each thread at the start. Generally at the bottom they're okay, but at the top they're corroded, and it makes a hell of a difference. You know, the actual tightening force that you need goes out of the window with that extra layer of corrosion on there. So taking that off will make life easier when it comes to getting the pipes back in the fittings. Just to recap, use a pointed scalpel, not to dig in too much, but just to pick at the corrosion. Just pick it off. It's particularly around the starting threads, and then you'll find that the gland, once you've got it lined up, will wind in easily by hand all the way to the hilt. That's what you're after. You don't want to be sort of fighting. You don't know whether you've got it cross-threaded or whether it's a bad fit or what. So if you know that the threads are clean and everything tightens in, which on mine these all do, they all go in and out nice and easily all the way to the end. I've just got a few more to do before I finish with this pump. This 1, 2, and there are lots of different diameters on these. Obviously I think the idea is to minimise the confusion you can get with the pipes. They're okay. I just have these smaller diameter ones, which is the left rear and the right rear. They're different diameters yet again. I've got to go and retrieve some connectors for these. So here's the point I'm trying to make. These are the rear pipe connectors here, and I've taken the glands off the pipes that were already on the vehicle, and I've just cleaned the threads up on these, so they're not corroded and smooth. But as you can see, if I get this one started, I can wind it so far I can't get any more further. Same with the one on this side. Now I'm going to chase those threads through with the scalpel and give them a clean, and we'll do another video and see how they look. I've cleaned the remaining two rear line connectors, and you can see that these now winding in out quite easily. Note that these are the original glands, which I've cleaned up, and they do stick out a lot further than the other ones, which is interesting. Note they are interchangeable, so it's not just lucky that I've got one to go in one and one to go in the other. They wind up to the end of their stops quite easily, as do all of the others. All wind in. I'm half tempted to leave these in, and maybe put something in the holes just to stop debris falling in there, and then take them out at the appropriate minute. 4 axle stands, and even then to extend the height a little bit so I could get underneath. Working on it is really difficult, but we're getting there. Now I think that we're going to have to disconnect the body and jack it up slightly on one side so that we can get the front to rear brake lines in. There doesn't seem to be an awful lot of room, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So far I've removed the anti-lock braking system pump from the Hummer, as much as I didn't want to, but I think it's highly recommended to do that for various reasons, which I'll put in the piece later. So the pump is actually on my workshop bench, all nice and cleaned. I'm going to run all of the line glands into the pump just to make sure they wind in and wind out easily, because you don't want to be struggling whilst you're underneath. And the most difficult challenges are going to be the front right brake line and the front to rear brake lines. I mean, they're all a challenge anyway, but they're going to be the most difficult. I've managed to correctly identify the master cylinder 1 and 2 lines. Classic tubes just label these up. They've got different part numbers, but they're labelled up as master cylinder line, so it doesn't tell you which is 1 or 2. And I think they can only fit in one way anyway, because the one that throws itself towards the front of the vehicle, which I believe is master cylinder 1, you can see that the angle is very different. And I've matched these up against the original ones, which I labelled up as I took them off. So this is just one of those confusion points that you'd rather not have. So there we go. That's the original ones, and you can see this one I labelled up as master cylinder 2. I don't know if you can actually see that. Master cylinder 2, and the other one below is master cylinder 1. And it would make sense because they run nice and parallel, and then they come out over the ABS pump in the right positions. That kind of solves that query. I'm going to label them at the ABS pump end, master cylinder 1 and master cylinder 2, just to avoid any further confusion. But I think we just check the part numbers. This one is master cylinder 1, which is HR5001A SS, which I guess stands for stainless steel. just to correct that previous video, master cylinder 1 is actually this one, which is labelled HR4, looks like 001A SS. Let's just double check that. Yep. So master cylinder 4001A SS is master cylinder 1, and the other one is 5001 HR5001A-SS, and that's master cylinder 2. It's not immediately obvious. Also, for the rear brakes, they can only fit in one place, I guess. But you know, whilst you're struggling and getting everything into place, it'd be really nice just to have them labelled at the end, so there's absolutely no confusion whatsoever. Another point about spanners or wrenches, if you're American. I bought, this isn't the complete set, there are some more, but these are the only ones that are of any value to us. I bought a complete set of Kennedy Imperial pipe wrenches, and these are good quality and fit really snugly. Having said that, despite the quality of manufacture, when it came to undoing this particular one, which is a really nice fit, it fits on there really well. I could not undo that gland whilst it was in situation. In some ways I'm grateful that I had to take the pump out, because it meant that I could actually make sure that all of the threads were nice and clean and that everything's going to go back together. But yeah, a really nice set of quality pipe wrenches is well worth it. These are really well made, chrome vanadium. Yeah, invest in those before you start. For the few bucks that it is, just get a set. I've finally put every single gland into the ABS pump, every single gland of the new tubes. Believe it or not, because they're new and the threads are just freshly cut and they are stainless steel, they were just a little bit tricky to wind all the way in. So with the aid of a wrench, they went in, came out by finger. It just helps. It just saves struggling when you're upside down and underneath, trying to get everything to line up. It's bad enough when they're clean, and you've got no chance when the threads are dirty. What was a little weird about the fittings, the glands that go on. Now, this big gland is the master cylinder pipes, which are a bigger diameter than the actual brake line pipes. Yet, that's a brake line pipe. That's the master cylinder pipe. And notice that the size of the nut part is much bigger for the smaller diameter line. Now, on the new lines, they've actually used a smaller let alone get it up in the air on ramps or over a pit. I do have a friend who's got a pit, but it's going to be very... So it's just gone 2 p.m. here in the UK. As I say, it's about 4 degrees and it's going dark already. Can you believe? The lights started to fail. We've got cloudy skies. The weather's forecast is not good. Let's just hope we can get some work done before it starts to pour down. It looks like I need to remove the front bumper in order to get a better access to the right front brake line. I've disconnected the spotlights from the grille on either side, 2 places. Took loads of bolts out, which I don't think I really needed to do. But if we put the hood back down, I've popped the cover out of here. There's, looks like an M18 bolt or quite short sizes, not an M18, probably an M10. So there's a bolt there, and then there's a bolt here and a bolt on the other side. So there's 4 of those. I think that may release the grill. I'll come back and notify you if there's any more. There's the right front brake line where it starts by the right wheel and works its way around over the front cross member, comes up and over. You can just see it in the background there behind those 2 corrugated pipes. Then it works its way around over the frame and then towards the ABS pump at the back. So I think it's pretty conclusive that gaining access to the front by taking the front bumper off makes a difference. As a record, these 2 bolts here and the bolt on the other side hold in the towing eye, same on the left hand side. And doing those bolts just removes the towing eyes. This member here is welded, so you can't get rid of it. You're stuck with that. It's part of the frame. This should come out, which will make the little bit of the brake line in the middle easier to get out, but whether or not we need to, I don't know. So there's no need to remove this. We've managed to manoeuvre the brake line over there. This side, just as a note, the brake line goes under these pipes. So it goes between that pipe and the pipe above it, that one there. So we're going between those, and somehow we've got to wangle that, finagle, as somebody said, the pipe over this member. This brake line here is pulled through from that position there. We don't have to go, you can't go over this. It just literally feeds in through the left hand side. That I've obviously cut the brake line to make life easier. So now we're going to make sure our new brake line looks something like that, which I know it doesn't at the moment. First thing I've done is taped the glands up on either end of the pipe, just as, I mean, I'm on a gravel driveway and I don't want to get any dirt in there. Plus, when you're manoeuvring it through the vehicle, there's bound to be debris and rust and everything else. This is my first attempt at getting a pipe actually into the vehicle. We'll use this as a starting point. This is a recap of fitting the front right brake line. You can see the brake line starts here, goes around the kind of shape and clips in these places, right? Then works its way around here and down. And I haven't clipped that pipe in yet because the master cylinder pipes go into the clips first. They're the hardest things to fit. When you're fitting that line, what you have to do is hook. Very difficult to describe. You have to hook the end that goes to the ABS pump is actually got like a hook on it. It's like a U-shaped hook. Comes this way, comes back into the back of the ABS pump, and you have to bring it to this side and hook it around this member here, and then poke it through. It takes a bit of manoeuvring to get it in, but it does go in. And then it takes a series of pulls and tugs. I had to disconnect at one point the ABS sensors, the brake sensors, to get the line down there. But there's quite a gap inside and quite a few pipes along the way, but it is in. I wouldn't want to do it again, but it is in. That's the start of it. Now, today I'm going to remove the master cylinder reservoir because there's a load of crud in there. I'm contemplating either cleaning inside there and flushing it out, or buying a new one. For me, the option of buying a new one's not easy because I've got to wait for days for it to come from the States. It usually takes a couple of weeks. I really didn't want to wait that long, but then again, taking the reservoir off after you've filled it is going to be really difficult because there's going to be brake fluid everywhere. Very difficult to drain. I'm going to take that off just to give me more access to this area here, which is very tight. I've got lots of wiring here. That's the next phase. I've managed to run the left brake line through. It's a little bit of a wiggle, and the hardest part is getting over this nut on here, which is, it will go, and getting it at the correct side of the pipe work. It kind of dodges in and out of certain pipes. Now, to remove my brake fluid reservoir, unfortunately this car is equipped with LPG, and the gas regulator is mounted the other side of the reservoir, and there are two pins, one here and one here, which you can't see, and I think the only way to get them out is to tap them out. So unfortunately this is in the way. I'm going to have to see if I can just push it to one side so I can get the reservoir off. To get the little split pins out, I've made a little tool, which is a pin on the end of it's just a ball-ended Allen wrench, and I just ground it to a point. It's not very strong, but it's just enough to stop it wandering about, and the pins tap out quite easily. That's the tool. Cost me nothing. Just a few minutes with a Dremel disc. The split pins came out, as you can see. They just tapped out. I used a cloth on the other side to make a landing area so that they didn't drop through the engine compartment, so I don't lose them. Now we just got to pull the reservoir off. I believe it should just lift off, but it's going to take two hands, so we'll try. Off came the brake fluid reservoir. The two O-rings look in pretty good condition, but they may need cleaning up. The whole thing needs cleaning up. And also, if we look inside of the top of the master cylinder, you can see there's all sorts of debris in there. So I'm going to carefully pick those out and clean them up. But it's still important to keep the debris out of the brake fluid. On to the next stage. So I've cleaned the two bores of the master cylinder with nice white tissue, which had the effect of absorbing the surface fluid. It also allowed me to run it around and wipe away from the holes all the debris. I'm pretty confident that the master cylinder is now squeaky clean. Whilst fitting the master cylinder lines to the ABS pump, which we've got to somehow slide in, not quite sure what that's going to do, I've just plugged these holes with tissue just to stop any debris falling in them. If we do refit this cylinder, which I probably will have to, I'm going to clean it up as best I can. I've taken the O-rings off using a very small screwdriver, taking care not to nick the O-rings in any way, because once you've damaged them they won't seal. And the bigger diameter is not too bad, but still needs cleaning. But you can see on the smaller O-ring point there is some crud in there. I'm going to clean all that away, otherwise again any dust or particles again there will mean it won't seal. So I'm going to clean all that off. Well, I think the cleaning of the brake fluid reservoir has been quite successful. I've cleaned everything, even the rubber cap, the O-rings, and inside. Now, I used isopropyl alcohol, IPA, which doesn't attack most plastics. It's quite an industrial strength cleaning agent, which is used a lot on this kind of product, so I don't think it will have damaged any of the plastic. I'm pretty sure it hasn't. and it is an evaporant, so it will, over a period of time, any residues in there will just evaporate away. So I'm going to leave this, probably somewhere warm, just to help it evaporate while I'm working on the rest of the line. But I think that we won't need to replace the brake fluid reservoir. The plan for the brake lines was to do the right hand side first, being the most, or seemingly the most difficult one to get in. The next one was the left hand side, which is probably one I didn't want to put in at this stage, but it just seems the right way to go with the layout on the ABS pump. This is a note regarding the plastic tube, stainless steel tubes, which come bent, and there'll be a little note or a label put on the bend that says shipping bend or shipping, and it's unlike all the other bends that you'll find. Most of them are angled bends done on a CNC bending machine. The plan is for you to actually unbend the tubes, which is a challenge because you don't want to add any bends in and you're trying to make it straight. Funnily enough, I found that just below the kneecap on my right knee is about the right anti-radius, just so that you can gradually straighten them up, and it's quite easy to do. The tubes are quite pliable. That's just a note. It's an easy hand job to straighten out the tubes. A tip for putting the tubes in is to tape the ends up to stop dirt getting inside. It also keeps the glands close to the end of the tubes to stop them rolling back and jamming on the elbow. Yeah, do that. This is a slight dilemma. As you can see, the ABS pump is about 30 millimeters too far to the left. Now, I went to bed last night worrying that the pipes may be crossed over here, but as you can see, I've got them pretty good. So it makes no sense why the pump is so far forward. The only thing I could think of doing is to push it from the left and then gently pull the remaining pipes through. Doesn't help that we've got these two hoses in the way. Mainly two pipes through. And just pull the excess pipe through. That's the next stage. Get those screws in the slots. The ABS pump is now firmly in its mountings and tightened up either side. The reason why the distance was wrong is because once you've clipped the pipes in, which is what I did, you can't move them. I mean, the clips look a bit plasticky and a bit, feeble, but you can really restrict movement of the pipe, so you can't actually push it forward. So what I had to do was slacken off all of the clips and do pipe smaller clips, and then pull the pipes through as much as possible. And they are semi-flexible. You can alter the bends slightly, and I guess even when you've got a computerized bending facility, they can still, it doesn't take more than 1 or 2 degrees to put things out. There's a trick to putting these little pins in. The pins have actually got a flat on them. You can't see from here because it's hidden, but this little shaft here, it's got a 6mm flat on it, which lines up in the slot in the bracket, so it drops into the slot of the bracket. Now the one at the back you can't see, but if you've got a 6mm spanner and just line the slots up till they're vertical, you can then make sure that when you pull the pump down it actually sits in the slots. Now this is a catch-22 situation because something tells you that you don't want to put the pipes on until you've got the pump mounted, but I can promise you trying to get the glands done up and get the pipes perfectly perpendicular to the pump whilst it's mounted is almost impossible. You need to have the pump loose so you can kind of
alter the geometry of the pump to match the gland, and then you'll find that you can actually get the glands in. Otherwise it's very difficult. This is a bit of a ball's ache, but with the aid of this little spanner, just lining up these shafts and dropping it in, you can't see the one at the back. There's an identical one at the rear, which is a 13mm nut and with a 6mm shaft. So you need something like a 5-degree ratchet spanner or 2.5-degree ratchet spanner, whatever the smallest is you can get, and then you can just once you've got it lined up, pull the pump in, tighten this one up so the pump doesn't move again, and then that's the pump mounted. So the pump is in, and 4 of the 6 pipes are connected. We've just got the rear left and rear right brake lines to add in. So that one of them is here on my fingers. I've actually got, you can't see, but I've actually left a gland in there, so I know where the hole is and I know the hole's clean. And there's one at the front here which I've taken the gland out, otherwise you can't tighten up the back brake line. So you can see I've got 2 brake lines here. This one has been cut here. Can you see? This one's been cut off, and the one here has been cut off, and it looks like I'm going to have to lift the body up to get those lines in. The front brake lines have all been piped up. So there's the master cylinder 1, master cylinder 2, left front and right front lines, which I've left them unclipped out of their mounts for the time being, just in case I have to move them again. It's a real pain. Now someone has told me that in order to get the brake lines through, we might have to lift the body up, which is a real pain if you haven't got a workshop to do that. I'm going to elect possibly to take in the Nerf bars off, which gives a bit more access maybe to the underside. Just they should come off reasonably easily because they were renovated only last year. They may not look like it, but they were been powder coated and painted, and all new nutserts put in the chrome, and it should just unbolt. But that's the theory, but I'm going to try not to do that. It looks like I may have to unclamp the left rear height sensor just so that we can get the pipes underneath it, and I may have to take this cover out just so that we can get a bit more access to the lines. This is another note. There's one rear brake clip which to get out involves I think taking out the rear airbag, rear left airbag. I'm not sure. I'm going to give this another go now I can see it clearly. Might be able to waggle that bolt out. I don't know. It's very close to the lip of this airbag here. So don't think that's going to come out. If that brake pipe clip was slotted, we could just undo the nut and slide it in, but that doesn't look like that's going to happen. It's time to refit the brake fluid reservoir. This is now dried out completely. Not even a smell, only a smell of brake fluid in fact inside. All the O-rings are clean. Everything's ready to pop back on. Top's nice and clean. So the master cylinder bores were protected by tissue, which has done its job, kept everything nice and clean. The new lines have been fitted, so we're just going to replace the reservoir. The 2 master cylinder lines, master cylinder 1 and master cylinder 2, snake down underneath with like a double S bend, and there's some clips that hold the cables, the pipes apart. One of them's got a breather tube on there. Now I can't remember from my video before which way that breather tube was. Also, the pipes are not necessarily, after being refitted, in the right orientation or distance apart. So I used a piece of rope
loop around the two to actually put them under tension. Whether that plastic clip will survive that amount of tension for a long time, I don't know, but it's in place at the moment. It may need something more substantial, like a cable tie or something around there, just to reduce the pressure. There seems to be no easy way to fix that. It's down to the tolerance on the pipe bending, I suspect. To relieve some of the tension on the pipes, well, on the actual clip, I've put a rather big cable tie around the pipes. I also slacken the glands off to let them find their sweet spot, if you like. So I think that should be okay. Everything looks fine down there now. So now I'm going to put back the brake fluid reservoir. I've just cheated slightly. I've put a little bit of silicone grease on the O-rings. I know someone's going to say that's a no-no, but it's a real hard job getting those into a perfectly clean and dry bore. There's just no way they're going to go in. The pressure required is enormous. I also took the time to refit the brake fluid level sensor. What a difference that made. Popped straight in. Now we're just going to put the split pins back in. Okay, they're very nice, clean, as you can see, spotlessly clean inside. Brake fluid reservoir is now firmly mounted back on its pins. The rear pin is okay, and the right hand pin is okay. Left hand pin's okay, right hand pin's okay. It's now time to reconnect the ABS pump connector. You can see the long tang that just pulls out to release it, and it's clipped at the base of the pump down here as it goes in. It's not difficult to remove, so should we have to do it as a rework or something we need to do, that's no problem. But I'm just going to put it in, keep the connectors clean and all the condensation out whilst the pump is sat here in the vehicle. As you can see, it's so tight underneath this vehicle. Even lying on my back, it's hard to focus the cell phone on the pump itself, so it gives you an idea how difficult this job was. In preparation for the two rear brake lines, I've started to unclip them wherever I find them. I was going to try and take this cover off to give me some easy access, but I'm not sure how much access that actually gives me. I've removed and just tucked away for the moment the rear left height level sensor, because the pipes pass through it, and they go off down here, and there is no gap between there and the body, so somehow we've got to lift the rear of the body up to get that through. I'm not quite sure if we can do it or not. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. No room for finagling. And it may be that I have to take the rear suspension unit out. The air suspension controller, because I just need to get in at the connectors. I'm going to take a look underneath, but I'm going to keep releasing all of the clips to see where the pipes take me to. As a note, this rear clip has only got one brake line through it. I'm not quite sure which one of these brake lines is which, but the one that we're going to put in first is the one that's furthest away from us. So we'll take it from there. It's a bit more of a record of the connectors and pipes. Now you see the two lines that come. That's one line there, which is not clipped, but it is there, so they're clipped there. On only one's clipped there, and then they work their way around to the connectors that take them to the flexible hoses that are somewhere. They're just here. So the flexible hoses go around and over the top. Really speaking, this air suspension unit is in the way. It might be easier just to take it out, but then we've got to deflate all of the airbags. So I'm not quite sure if I want to do that rather than put on the deflate mode. So I might just connect the car back up and deflate the tyres, sorry, the airbags, and I then may be able to attend to this line here that's not secured. Might have to take the bull by the horn. The rear brake lines run over the rear left wheel, down underneath the bodywork, and they pick up and carry on all the way up to the ABS pump, clipped in. Now I think if we could just release these from the clips, the real choke point is here. That's a real choke point. But whether or not we need to do anything with the body just to get through those points, I'm not sure. That is a real choke point. After that, we've got to work out where everything goes. Right, it's night time here. I've taken the Nerf bars off the left hand side, and I've also depressurized the air system because I'm going to remove the air suspension. I'm really puzzled as to how we're going to get these pipes in. I couldn't get the old ones out without cutting them up into a million pieces, so it's not abundantly clear how I'm ever going to feed them in. But I've got to go as far as removing the air suspension anyway, so I can get at the glands underneath there. It may be, as my colleagues suggest, we have to jack the body up so we can get the pipes in. How I do that, I just don't know. I've released the main connector to the air suspension, and I'm just going to remove the, looks like the power connector, the little cable tie that's locking that tang in place, so I'm going to snip that off. The main connectors have now been disconnected, which now leaves 4 bolts, and then there's the pneumatic pipes. I have to say, having a car under sealed is not very good on the electrics. I should think if you ever have your car under sealed, just say don't spray the connectors. But anyway, we'll work with what we have. According to my colleagues and the information I found online, there are 12 body mounts holding the body to the chassis. Now, there's a risk involved in slacking off the body mounts, but anyway, I'll go through them. So we have one here, another one here, you can see that one. We have another one there. So that's 1, 2, 3. Another one here. Not sure where the other one is. Anyway, there's 6 on either side. The problem is that the state of the body mount bolts, the M18 bolts I believe, they are indeterminate. They could be rotten, as I've seen in pictures, so it could open a whole new can of worms by releasing the body mounts. So I'm going to try and somehow get this line in. This is the worst shape possible for feeding through. This is the left rear brake line, and it's got to be the first one to go in because it's on the far side of all of the clips, and that's got to work its way around underneath there. Now, classic tube put on their patterns fold points, but they also add some other fold points which are not shown, which is confusing because it doesn't bend like that on the end there. It's obviously straighter than that. But anyway, we're going to give it a try. This is a view with the air suspension removed. You can see the pipes coming along, and there's a clip just as it comes behind this member here, which is seriously impeding removing these pipes. I'm going to just pop that out and pull the remaining pipes out. This looks like the VAP canister, so I'm just going to pop it off because it's really in the way. Keeps springing around all over the place. There's one electrical connection which is just here, and then there's the pipe here which I think just prizes off. Well, 5 of the body mounts from one side have been removed. The one that's missing is probably underneath that lot there, underneath the air suspension, and since it's now lowered, I'm hoping that it will lift up. There's no air in the airbags, so there's nothing to keep them in place, and I've got 2 new airbags should anything go wrong there. All of the bolts all the way around have been loosened, and you need to remove the front bumper, which I've only just refitted to get at these ones here, and mine were full of water. I mean, what a design, absolutely full of water. Now, fortunately enough, the screws were not rusted, all pretty much in good condition, so I've slackened all of the ones on this side, taken them out in fact, and rightly or wrongly I've greased them all the way to the hilt, so they're in by just the tip of their threads. My plan is to use some wood to jack up just in front of where we need to get to, which is here. Now, whether or not we can get through and lift the body from there, I don't know. It's going to be back heavy, I would suspect, so maybe it won't, but we can at least try. My plan is to make a T-brace. My workshop looks like a bomb's hit it. Such has been the intensity of work over the last week. It's going to take a month of Sundays to clean it up. So I'm just going to screw these pieces together so there's little chance of them slipping. There's my brace. 5 screws stuck in the end there, well deep. It's never going to move. The head's been buried well below the surface. Nothing to snag. With the jack and brace underneath, that's a structural point on the chassis there. So we've managed to lift the chassis up, get these points out of here, so we've got a good clearance there now, and that is enough. Although some of the bungs took some damage trying to get them out. It should look like that. Seems to be flats on them, but that one goes in that one there. So those are out. Just to see what happened at the rear end here. We've got to be careful when we lower this down that these wires stay out of the way of that gland. In fact, there's hardly any movement there at all. So well, hopefully we've not twisted the body. There was an earth connection point, one of those strategic earth connection points which you don't want to lose. So I've had to undo that to get the pipe through. We've now managed to finagle this pipe through, and we're just going to put this into place and start on the second pipe. I want to get the Hummer back down on its mountains as soon as possible. Last time I think I was too quick in taking off the height levelling sensor, left height levelling sensor. I had to put it back on so that I could deflate the airbags, and now I've got to take it off again to put the extra lines through. I'm electing to put in the rear left brake line whilst I can, because I need that pipe to be perfectly perpendicular. I'm trying to get a better view of this. It's very difficult when we're so close, but we're going to get that in and then think about the second brake line and get in the pipes in their mounts.